Expert recommendations and previously voluntary precautions hardened into law at 5 p.m. Saturday as Gov. J.B. Pritzker's stay-at-home order took effect.
The directive, aimed at slowing the barreling momentum of the coronavirus pandemic, bars gatherings of more than 10 people. It closes playgrounds to children, just as spring arrives. With the exception of a broad array of workplaces deemed essential, it closes businesses and other institutions until at least April 7.
As some Illinoisans spent a cold, gloomy Saturday stocking up on essentials, Pritzker held a news conference at the Thompson Center in downtown Chicago that underscored the reasons for his action. The state's top physician, Dr. Ngozi Ezike, announced 168 new cases of COVID-19, and one more death. That brought the state's tally to 753 known cases and 6 deaths.
Stay home, she said. Yes, that means sacrificing getting together to celebrate what should be some festive milestones. Let's all stay home so that we can all celebrate down the road.
Expanding efforts to build capacity for medical treatment, Pritzker called on doctors, nurses and physicians' assistants who have recently left the field to come back and join the fight. He announced the state will expedite licensing and waive fees, and he added that health care workers whose licenses will soon expire will be automatically extended through September.
This is heroes' work, he said. All of you have our deepest gratitude for your willingness to serve.
Asked whether state officials were concerned about putting older, retired medical professionals in close quarters with the disease, Pritzker spokeswoman Jordan Abudaya said in an email, "Obviously we don't want to put any vulnerable people at further risk from undue exposure."
Retired professionals can be used in various ways in other aspects of healthcare that then relieves frontline workers or allows workers at lower risk to move to the front lines, she wrote.
Even as he defended his own measures, Pritzker lashed out at the federal government over the lack of coronavirus tests available, echoing his past criticisms of President Donald Trump's efforts against the disease.
Are we seeing more tests? Yes, but not even at the numbers that were promised weeks ago, he said. I'm hopeful, in a way, that the commercial laboratories and that the private sector will help us figure this out because so far the federal government hasn't.
In the hours before the ban took effect, parts of Chicago showed only subtle visible differences from any other dreary early spring weekend. Grocery stores and other retailers on the north and northwest sides appeared busy but not debilitated by crowds, and people walked dogs and jogged on sidewalks.
But the new reality was clear at nearly deserted retail plazas, and at restaurants empty of diners, where employees passed customers' pickup orders through doors.
The order largely codifies prior recommendations and rules issued by state officials, and many were already taking the measures. Officials are mostly counting on people self-policing, and Pritzker indicated that he did not expect cops to enforce the order heavy-handedly. An egregious violation might draw a misdemeanor reckless conduct charge, he said. Chicago police spokesman Anthony Guglielmi said as of about 8 p.m., police had no arrests or disturbances that were related to the stay-at-home order. This is a public health issue, and the last thing we want to do is make it a police issue, Guglielmi said. Officers have been told to step in if they see a crowd larger than 10 people. If they don't want to disperse, a supervisor is called, Guglielmi said. It's not about locking people up. It's about keeping people safe so the disease doesn't spread any further. Pritzker and Mayor Lori Lightfoot have tried to strike a balance between communicating the lethal seriousness of the disease and avoiding causing panic. To that end, Lightfoot on Saturday morning sought to reassure Chicagoans that food would remain available, including to the poor. Flanked by local charity leaders at the Office of Emergency Management and Communications, she noted the order would not shut down grocers or restaurants that serve food for pickup. She acknowledged the unprecedented times but asked people not to crash grocery stores to hoard food. She pointed out that Chicago public school students can get free meals at schools, while Kate Mayer, executive director of the Greater Chicago Food Depository, encouraged people in need to visit the organization's website to find places to pick up sustenance. Nonetheless, some Chicagoans clearly were concerned about the impact of the order on the food supply.
Brenda Smith and neighbor Amanda Harris of the South Side's Chatham neighborhood saw a line outside the Food 4 Less grocery store on 87th Street and decided to drive to southwest suburban Burbank to shop.
Hopefully the social problems of living in food deserts will be brought to the forefront during this time, Harris said.
Smith added, in times like these, we have to encourage each other and remind each other that if we work together, things will be all right.
As some stock up, parents worried about the consequences the order would have for their children.
At Oz Park in the Lincoln Park neighborhood, Ray Pellilis crouched down with his arms around his two sons, 3 and 5, as they took a last chance to play at a city playground. Lightfoot has mandated they all close as part of the stay-at-home order, though green space in parks will remain open.
Pellilis said he understands the need for precautions, but added that he's running out of things to do with his kids. It will be difficult to explain to the boys why they can't use the swings and the slides, he said.
We can't go to church and pray. We can't go to the park and play, Pellilis said. We need fresh air.
Sohail Zadeh canceled the birthday parties for his two sons, 14 and 11, in light of Pritzker's order. But the boys understand, Zadeh said.
They're pretty reasonable kids, he said.
Terry Odom and her 7-year-old son arrived at the Lincoln Park branch of the Chicago Public Library just as librarians were locking up, leaving with plants and other personal belongings around 12:30 p.m. Lightfoot ordered public libraries closed.
Odom noted that her son will no longer be able to have playdates, and she reminded him that he won't be able to play soccer.
Oh, come on, the boy responded.
Adults, meanwhile, feared for their paychecks.
Along several blocks of Clark Street in Rogers Park, Mexican restaurants and hair salons were dark, with notices on the windows in English and Spanish announcing closures or delivery-only services. Rocio Garcia works at a bakery that had only reopened Monday following repairs. She said she was just out of work for 12 weeks.
The thing I'm most afraid of is losing my job, she said.
Other businesses were reaping the rewards of the crisis.
Fred Lutger, owner of the Tinley Park gun shop Freddie Bear Sports, said, "We're almost sold out of everything."
Gun stores are one of the businesses deemed essential and allowed to stay open. Lutger said there have been lines of people wanting guns and ammunition.
As state officials announced the growth in the number of cases, Lightfoot lauded the germinating charity efforts designed to ease the crisis. She announced that the Chicago Community COVID-19 Response Fund, launched by the Chicago Community Trust and United Way of Metro Chicago, had raised $13.5 million this week. As difficult as things are now, we are seeing the resiliency that is part of this city's DNA and our resolve to make sure that we do everything that we can to be neighbors to each other to get us through this difficult time and on the other side, she said. Despite the drastic, indefinite interruption of professional, social and family lives, the mayor counseled people to continue enjoying small pleasures, such as walks. My wife and I took a walk this morning. A little brisk, but good for the soul, she said. Frank Vaishvilas is a freelance reporter for the Daily Southtown.